Vincent Bellomo,
Here.
Ralph Branson, Denise Carey. Here. Teresa Davis,
Here.
Brent Dodrell,
Here.
Sean Drinkwine,
Here.
Katie Dunsmuir. Here. Justin Gates, Charity Hughes. Here. Nick Ingram,
Here.
Joel Lidkey,
Here.
Suzanne Sager,
Here.
Paul Strobel,
Here.
Jerry Tenbush.
Here. Okay, we are now at the selection of the chair. Could I have a nomination for the chair?
Nominate Sean Drinkwine.
I'll second that.
Well, thank you. So we have a nomination on the floor. We have a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for that. Okay, so read the top part here. Well, I will now open the public hearing to discuss the possible uses of state revenue shared funds for the city of Estacada. Oh, for 4.
We need 3. We need to approve the minutes first.
Oh, okay. All right. Can I have a motion to approve the May 11th, 2021 budget committee minutes?
I so move. I'll second that.
I have a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, we are now at the public hearing. I will now open the public hearing to discuss the possible uses of state revenue shared funds for the city of Estacada. I will ask the budget officer, Melanie, to explain the funding.
I just watched no, can you explain it? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so this is just for us to receive the state revenue shared funds for the marijuana, liquor, cigarette, and state highway gas tax. So we have to have this public hearing each year in order to receive those funds that go into our general fund.
Okay, great. And you, when we come out of this, you'll need a motion for that very thing, right?
We just need to open it up for public comment
Okay,
and then close it and we can go back into our budget hearing.
okay, great.
Yeah.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak regarding these funds? See anybody on there? Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Anybody have anything? No? Okay, I will now close the public hearing and open up the Estacada Budget Committee meeting. And at this point, you need what?
And now we just go on to the presentation of the budget message. Right?
Okay. And that is the next on the list, the presentation of the budget message. And I will give that over to you, Melanie.
Okay, thank you. So the budget message is in the packet. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll go through quite a bit of it because it explains the breakdown of the budget a lot. So I'm pleased to present the proposed fiscal year 2022-23 budget for the city of Estacada. The submittal of this budget is required by Chapter 294 of the Oregon Revised Statutes that establishes standard procedures for the preparation, presentation, administration, and review of the city budget. Changes to the budget can be made at any step in the process if it is determined it is in the best interest of the city of Estacada. And as we just witnessed, I'll just comment on this. We just witnessed it seems like just a procedure that we go through. It doesn't really have any meaning. It's required by law, but I think it's great to include additional members of the public on the budget committee and to go through this process and just to have transparency and more eyes and ears on what the city council sets goals for and then manages through the year and has prioritizes for staff to do. So thank you for participating in this. So last year, just a quick recap, we had just come through 1 year of COVID, thought we were doing good, and then we were going back into the extreme risk category at this time, which I kind of had forgotten about. So there was shutdowns and a lot of uncertainty in the community. Most of the summer events were canceled throughout Clackamas County, so it was nice for us to be able to sponsor the 4th of July parade and a few concerts in the park. And city staff continued to provide services to the community. City council and the committees met remotely and also then with hybrid options to engage the community and keep meetings open and accessible to the public through all of that time. And the surprises were not over. with all the things going on, because then we had that extreme heat that came at the end of June with Estacada reaching approximately 114. I don't know what the exact temperature was, but it was a little surprising. And then Highway 224, which we thought was opening, stayed closed through the rest of the year, just opened at the beginning of this month of May 2022, which was hard on our businesses and also cut out a lot of recreation. Still, there's not a lot open up there, but there's river access and people are able to go and get up the river again. So I'm glad to have that back and open now, but over the past year, that was really not anticipated. Through all the challenges, I do appreciate the city staff. They have remained steadfast, continued to serve community. Many who were working in City Hall have been working remotely, then coming back, then going back to work remotely. And we've been just making those adaptations as necessary. And then we have, public works, the plant operators and the library staff, they don't have the option of working remotely, but they still found ways to stay healthy and productive and continue serving the community. So, and then just a quick comment that one of the biggest changes we had was when our city manager, Denise Carrier, retired, but she has retired, but has not left us abandoned. So we appreciate her continued assistance. And she really set up the city organizational structure and processes to make a really smooth transition. I feel like it's, it was a bit of uncertainty for a few months there, like what's going to happen. And she really just set us up and we just kept right on going. So appreciate that. And our capital improvement projects that are included in this budget, they were selected based on council goal setting and along with infrastructure improvements that are in the city's master plans. Just a quick note on utility rate increases. The past 4 budgets didn't propose utility rate increases. However, we did just this one, and when I wrote this, the new sewer rate increase was not approved. It was just approved at City Council last night. And thank you, Councilor Tenbush, for pointing out that Estacada is still at the very much lower end of the cities in Clackamas County as far as sewer rates. But with the new the wastewater treatment plant improvements that are needed, DEQ has been making recommendations, which we take seriously, but also take into consideration our community. And we want to be able to raise the utility rates incrementally and not have a big jump that might be hard for people to budget for. So this budget includes a sewer utility rate increase, but not water or wastewater. And with previous conservative budgeting and spending, along with available grants, this budget is allowing the city to be able to fund $6.4 million in projects. And this, I will say, is a conservative budget. I didn't come in and make a bunch of changes. I felt like we're on a really good trajectory with being conservative and planning for the future, but yet providing services. So I kind of maintained that trajectory we were on. The council has adopted a financial policy that establishes minimum ending fund balances for each of the primary operating funds to be not less than 10% of expenditures for each fund. That's for the general fund, library, street, water, storm sewer, and the sewer or wastewater fund. And all funds will meet this requirement with this budget. There has been no changes in the financial policies of the city from last year. And we are presenting this budget as a balanced budget. That means that expenditures do not exceed total resources available in all of the funds. So this might blur in a little bit to the next item on the agenda, just the overview of the budget, but I'll just go ahead and go through this. Is also in the budget message. The proposed budget this year is $22,224,835, and it reflects a 7% decrease from last year. There are many reasons why a budget would increase or decrease. This decrease is likely due to the Wade Creek Park 3 Phase 3 project that is completing this year. As long as the weather holds, we'll be wrapping that up at the end of June with just a few details to complete early in July. So that is likely why there's a decrease in the budget. The projected fund balances Last year, they were in 9.7 million. This year, they are $10,420,325, which is an increase of over 7% of our beginning fund balances. In the last few years, we've seen planning and building revenue increase, and in spite of the pandemic and the rising cost of materials and the supply chain issues, somehow they continue to move forward with their building. So we anticipated the budget. We are budgeting resources based on the growth that we've continued to see over the past year, and in spite of concerns of cost of materials and things like that, our recent history has showed that they continue to press on. So we're planning for that. And just another note, as the city is preparing to construct the new wastewater treatment facility, it is requiring an increase in sewer rates, but we'll try to keep those as incremental as possible. We're also, staff is researching some income-based assistance programs. We have a senior income-based assistance program for the sewer utility rates, and we're looking at how other low moderate income people in our community may be affected by this, and looking to find ways to expand that program if it turns out to be feasible. So for the fun stuff in the budget for public works, we have a new mower, a dump truck, 2 new pickup trucks, one for public works and one for the plant operators, and a biosolids truck. And we are also budgeting money to update the water plant, the water master plan, as we are also expanding our water capacity. We'll need to be updating that plan. This budget also proposes funds to begin the training of a new deputy to be added to police services. It takes about a year to get once a recruit is hired, to have them fully trained and reporting for duty. And according to our contract with the contract cities and Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, the cities fund that a portion of that deputy, their salary, just their salary for the year that they're in training. And so our plan is, I don't think I wrote it down later, but to have a new deputy. We just increased services at the hours of services, but we'll add one more new deputy by not this September, but next September of 2023. So we're budgeting for that, planning ahead. We also received the American Rescue Plan Act funds, ARPA funds. And in this year, this fiscal year, we're currently in $418,686. We'll receive the same amount in this current budget you're looking at for the coming year. And those, they're allocated into the general fund, and the city council will be deciding on how those funds will be used. We'll be bringing that to them soon. Prior conversations with the council has indicated that putting that toward the wastewater treatment facility would be a wise move at this point. And so we'll explain a little bit how that is being set aside in a few more minutes. So for personnel, we have currently 22 full-time employees and various part-time and seasonal positions. We're proposing in this budget to add a second full-time planner in our community development department and a third plant operator to work in the plants. Both the community development department and the water wastewater department have seen significant increases in workload, which these new positions will support. And then we also have our many contracts, which we find it works better as a small city to have contracts for a variety of things. Some examples: police service, legal services, engineering services, and building inspections. The personnel services budget for 22-23 is $3,388,950. This is 14.5% higher than the current budget of fiscal year 21-22. And it is 15% of the total city budget. To highlight some projects, we have $6.4 million budgeted for projects. The very first one on the list, $300,000 for replacing 2,400 feet of sewer mains across the mill property. We had budgeted that this year, and then it was progressing slowly as far as when the project was starting. So we put $300,000 into this proposed budget, thinking it was going to not be done until probably July or August. However, that contract came in at a really good number. It was approved last night at City Council, and they started this morning. And according to Dawn and our city engineer, they should be done in a couple of weeks, barring too many unforeseen things. So in that case, this 300,000 will just stay, it'll go be in the ending fund balance. We don't do the use it or lose it mentality here. If we don't use it, it stays in the ending fund balance and then can be used for different projects later. Or if something comes up and there's a different type of project, that would be present. I'm not sure how that would get, it would get approved through the city council, right? If we needed to use that for a different project, since this project will be complete. We're also using $75,000 to continue I&I, which is inflow and infiltration, where groundwater gets into the sewer pipes. And then that means it's going to the treatment plant. When we have all this rain, water goes into the sewer pipes through leaky manhole covers or leaky pipes where you think they leak out, they leak in, the groundwater leaks in, goes through the sewer treatment plant, and that has to be treated. And it causes a lot of extra water treatment that wouldn't need to happen. So we work on that every year. And that's budgeted for this year. We are planning to do the Hillway Extension Project, which will connect where Hillway ends on Cemetery into the Campanella Estates, provide an additional route out of the Cascadia Ridge and Cemetery Road communities. An exciting project is the Foothills Drive paving project. This is, we used to get a special cities allotment grant because we were under 5,000. We don't get that anymore because we have crossed the line, but now we will get, they told us it would be about $60,000 from ODOT for surface transportation block grant. That's not as much as we used to get for being a special city under 5,000, but we will take it and then we'll find out exactly what that is. But we budgeted $200,000 for the Foothills Drive paving project, which is Foothills, Edge Hill, Glen Court, and Bunyard Court. I don't know if you've driven around up there lately.
Live there.
Yeah, but it could use some love. And there's also like areas where there's again that clay that's underneath and it causes the pavement to degrade. So there's some repair needed and then just resurfacing as well. That'll be a great project. We are getting
It'll be a great project when it's finished.
when it's finished. I know it'll be a little tortuous in doing it, but because there's no other way out. So we'll work with the residents up there though. We applied for a CDBG grant through Clackamas County to improve ADA ramps on uptown on Broadway and Main. If you've noticed those, sometimes there's an ADA curb ramp at the corner that's mostly subpar. And there's also some corners that don't even have them. And so this grant, we have to provide a match for. We're not completely sure we're getting it, but we are planning for the match anyway, just in case, because we're pretty sure that we're going to get it. The reconstruction of Wade Street from the south end of like between the park and the library on down to 6th. Yeah, obviously, I'm pretty sure everybody's driven on that. We need to finish that out. We need a sidewalk on the west side and curb and sidewalk. We'll do curb. We won't get all the way down to 6th, but we'll come as far as we can with curb and sidewalk, depending on budget, on the Wade Creek House side. That will finish out that stretch of roadway and sidewalk. And it will be something that we've been working on for quite a while to get a sidewalk all the way to get to the park and the library without gaps. So $1.5 million for our high level water reservoir, 1.6 to move forward with wastewater treatment plant relocation. Right now we're working on identifying purchasing property and getting easements for the sewer trunk line and design and engineering. So that is for that. A biosolids processing improvement, which is where biosolids, they're grade B biosolids from the wastewater plant. You see them getting spread on fields, and there's much more population out here, and people don't necessarily, they can't cope with that being on the fields because it's right next to homes. So we're changing that process to align more with how other plants do that. This equipment that we're buying will be able to be relocated to the new plant. So it's not an investment here that's going to be lost. Campanella Park and Cascadia Ridge Park, working on some improved design and engineering for Campanella, and then just putting in a couple of amenities up at Cascadia Ridge Park. That sounds like a lot, $150,000 for a couple of amenities. But we'll only spend as much as we need, and it just depends on what the amenities are. We'll be surveying that community. And then also $130,000 for the North Sports Complex restrooms and concessions, which is a partnership with the school district and their North Fields. And then $40,000 to update the water master plan. And I want to just go through finally just some of the funds to help you understand what our primary operating funds are. So first is the general fund, and it's the main governmental fund of the city, has 7 functional divisions. And that's where all tax and fee revenues are accounted for and spent. And you'll notice in the breakout, if you're following along, in that we have administrative, non-departmental, contingency, and then the contingency, is this where I should probably highlight that it's been recommended. I noted that the ARPA funds are going to go into the general fund. And since those are not allocated to any project yet, they would end up in contingency. And so do you want to explain how we want to set up a reserve line for that? So actually the 800,000 plus of that contingency would be in a reserve fund that for whatever the ARPA funds are designated for. So really it's the about $2 million of contingency, which would be our ending fund balance, right? Okay. And that is not reflected in the budget that you have right here. Do you want to, do we need to explain that, how we will do that, or?
Yeah, so we would just move the full amount that we're planning to receive for the ARPA funding and put it in a designated expense line in the same fund. And it would reduce our contingency the same amount. So it won't change the ending balance of our budget, but just a way for us to track it better. So it doesn't get lost in.
If Sadie wins the lottery, then we would still be able to keep track of what our ARPA funds were. Okay. Yes, and thank you to budget committee member Carrie for recommending that, so that that's a good process that we should have implemented. So it doesn't change this. It can still be approved as proposed, but we'll track that a little differently. And this, it shows 900,000 for police. And that, like I was saying, is to bring on a new deputy. And as I was talking with the police chief, we'll be ramping that up until we kind of have it planned out through 2025. And that'll be something for city council to confirm those recommendations as we go. But for right now, we have funding in there to include the SRO, which the school district reimburses the city for half of that. And then also to request a new deputy and get them trained up. So the general fund is in good financial condition with an estimated ending fund balance of $2,846,690, which is enough to handle possible emergency needs. Then the next primary fund is the library fund. They have 5 full-time staff included in this budget, so that'll be 1 more than they have right now. And they meet the criteria of having at least 10% contingency. With their ending fund balance or contingency is expected to be $202,350. And they're optimistic that also the library board reviews their proposed budget before it comes to Sadie and financial officer to implement this. So they have the oversight of the library board as well. And they're confident that it will remain stable for the next few years. We have the street fund, and that's where a lot of those, the shared gas tax, the county vehicle registration fees, grant plan review fees, and general fund help with the street fund. This is the second year, I believe, that the street fund has met that 10% ending fund balance. The street fund has always been a challenge for the city, and this year, again, it will meet that 10%.
And I think it's the first year in many years that there isn't a transfer from the general fund to be able to do that.
Yeah, good to know. So, even those are annoying fees to pay sometimes, the city is able to do good stuff. So just highlighting some of those projects, again, it's the Foothills neighborhood, the Hillway connection, doing general street maintenance, which helps to preserve the life of the streets. Then the water fund, that's the first of our enterprise funds, meaning we might operate this like a business. And just quickly to note there, the total anticipated expenditures are $1,196,730. And we have an ending fund balance or contingency of actually more than that, over $1.2 million. And that keeps us in the safe zone if we have, if anything needs to be replaced, it tends to be expensive. We did just also repair the water line going across the bridge that was leaking. It had been leaking minimally for a while, and then it needed to be repaired. So there's things like that come up. Hopefully not too often, but storm sewer fund, that work is highly labor intensive, requires the streets to be swept, cleared of leaves and debris, and the total expenditures for that fund are $320,780, and it gives us a good contingency of over $201,000. And there's money coming from this fund to help with the Hillway connection project, because there will be storm sewer in that new street. The sewer fund is, it has expenditures of just over $1.7 million, and then has a contingency of $581,615. So we are continuing, as mentioned before, to work on those leaks in the old underground pipes that allows the groundwater to flow in. And as it's noted in the budget message that there's $300,000 to finish replacing the old sewer lines across the mill property. But if we get that done this year, that won't have to be spent. Then we do have reserve funds that are restricted for capital improvement projects funded by system development charges. They're parks, water, street, storm sewer, and sewer, and they all maintain positive cash reserves for future expansion projects. I won't go through all of those numbers, but they are in good shape. We have a bonded debt funds. There's two funds, funds 80 and 85, that collect the funds and make the payments for a bonded debt that has been assumed by the city. And then just to wrap this up quickly so you'll have time for questions, the proposed budget reflects the priorities, policies, and goals of the Estacada City Council and the citizens it represents. Our revenues are being prudently spent on things necessary to maintain our systems in working condition and the construction of necessary infrastructure to accommodate growth while maintaining adequate reserves for unanticipated expenses. The budget continues to fund capital improvement needs in public works and the treatment plants, along with upgrades to our park infrastructure and plans for increasing police services. The addition of new staff positions will also allow us to meet the demand for services brought about by the growth the community is experiencing. And I appreciate this staff working on this. Each department head puts together their wish list and then really what they need. And they work hard to anticipate what they're going to need in the next year. And I appreciate that. And then especially a big thank you to Sadie Main, our finance director, who really has probably can answer many more questions than I can about this budget. So I might defer to her as our finance officer. And she's done a great job putting together what I'm confident is a very strong, balanced budget. So thank you for that. And I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, we thank you for that. Very thorough. We appreciate all of you for putting this together for us. In that, we are looking for comments or discussion. Does anybody have any questions for Melanie concerning the budget? Joel?
I got a couple. First one is real quick question. Last year we had a special election. Did that cost us any money? Because I see it's a 0 in 2021 actual.
I don't think it was a special election. It was at the general.
It went for the general, but it didn't cost us anything?
No.
Okay. May I continue?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. So my question has to do in the back, and it has to do with a couple things. And this has to do with the grants in the back here. So
What page are you on, Joel?
I'm trying to get back there. 18, almost in the, it says, the top says 20, 22, 23 miscellaneous dash 937. All right, so under here, we have the various sponsorship for community events, that's fine, but underneath it says Chamber of Commerce Agreement and Community Center Agreement. So I've had a chance to look at some of the ordinances, and I was looking at chapter 279. And according to chapter 279, in order to grant, one of them would fall into the intermediate bid area, and one would fall into the small one for procurement. That's 279.A and 279.B is where it talks about these. So my question is, first of all, with the Chamber of Commerce agreement, that $25,000, my understanding is that goes towards advertisement and tourism, correct?
Correct. That is, yes, we contract with them mostly for its tourism.
So that's a procurement of services. It's under 25,000. So that requires us under Oregon revised statutes, like I said, 279B, and I can give you the subsection if you need, that we are required to put it out to bid for 3 and you receive 3 bids on that. We don't have to go through the sealed bid process because it can be informal bids is what it says, but we are required to put that out for bids. We can't just hand it to them. So Chamber of Commerce agreement would actually be contrary to what the requirements are in public law here. So we would need to identify that as advertising or okay.
Sorry.
It'd have to be identified as advertising or tourism, and then we'd have to seek out, open it up for public bid, receive bids from the chamber or other bidders, and then make a decision on it in order for us to follow what that is for the intermediate. For the small one, this one here, are we receiving any services or any procurement from the community center? Or is that just going to like a grant to assist them?
That usually we calculate how many people live in the city limits who are receiving the Meals on Wheels service, and that can help to justify the cause of, because they do a lot of service out in the county too, but that would cover at least most of the people in the city, or some of the people in the city, I guess I should say.
And I think it's great that we do that, but we need to write that as a grant program. And then we have to run through the normal process you would for a grant, where they'd have to apply for a grant. We can write a grant that says something along the lines of grant for organizations that do Meals on Wheels, that are organized Meals on Wheels services under the state, or something along those lines. And then they can apply for a grant, and then we can award them the grant. We can run it that way, but to have a separate agreement actually is contrary as well. They don't fall under procurement law. That's why they'd have to fall under a grant.
Are you requesting that we change the title of this, and then we can check with the auditor?
Yeah, we'd have to change the title,
Like the title
or
of the-
change the purpose of it and what it falls under, and then run through the process. So we have to create a process under that as well.
So
We can't
could-
just set it to award.
So we could change the title of the, like instead of saying Chamber of Commerce Agreement, saying Tourism and City Promotion Agreement. And then I would need to check with our auditor on how that, and it would be the auditor we would check with on how to run that, to change that process to do that.
Yeah,
so
and I can
that
provide
way-
you the state laws that I.
But as
would
far
have
as
looked
the
up for as well.
budget goes, if we change the title here, and then staff would work on the process improvement. And is that what you're indicating?
Yeah, the process would be something probably passed by the council, not the budget committee. But as far as passing and going through the budget, we definitely can't call it that, because that would insinuate automatic awardment to either one of these, rather than running it through a grant or a bid process, as we should be doing. So titling it as a way that it had to require them to go through a bid process, such as putting it up for advertisement in tourism, or however it's called, then we can write a program underneath that. But the money's budgeted for it, but it's not automatically awarded to one group by its title.
So like to amend this would be, your recommendation to amend it would be to retitle this to Tourism Agreement and Meals on Wheels Program Agreement?
I think
Something
the
like
title
that.
can be seen as we need. It could be
Okay,
a Meals on Wheels grant program and tourism and advertising or advertising a tourism
Mm,
contract
Okay,
or something. I don't know. That had to be opened up.
right. So I think I could, unless anybody else has comments on that.
I've got a
Okay.
couple here. Katie, you had one, so I have to let Brent go first, or you want to?
I had a general question about the budget. If someone has a comment
Yeah, I
to
think
talk
that's
about,
what
why don't you guys? go
Okay.
ahead?
Brent?
So I guess this is a question for Joel. So it's not the amounts that it would affect the budget, it's just the process. He's saying the city is not going through the right process.
Yeah, there's a process, has to be the
Okay.
budgets, the amounts are fine.
Right, okay, so I guess just to clarify, as far as our job as the budget committee,
Mhm.
we're approving the budget. It's the city's job to make sure those processes are done correctly. And I'm not disagreeing with you at all, just saying
Mhm.
our job at the budget committee is not to figure out what you just talked about. It's to approve the amount.
Yeah,
that's
I
been
would
budgeted.
say we're approving also the entitlement of the budget. I think those need to be rewarded. That's the simple way for us here.
Sure.
And then, of course, the other part of it
Okay.
would be.
Maybe it's changed this year, but in the past, the amount for the chamber was not for tourism and advertising. It was for our contribution to personnel services. So we weren't contracting them to do tourism and advertising. We were giving them money to cover the cost of their personnel, which would be completely different than, we wouldn't be putting that out for bid because it's their personnel. Now, the reasoning behind what we were going to get for that help was they were going to do certain things, and that was in the agreement. So unless that's changed this year, where we're actually paying the 25,000 to cover the actual advertising, and then that would be a different thing. But if we're still just paying the 25,000 to help cover staffing, then I think that's a different
Okay.
thing
So
altogether.
I think that's something I would need to check with the auditor about how to run that process. And so I'm not opposed to changing the name of the program if that, I mean, is that in the spreadsheet? Would we change that as a?
I think that we
So-
leave it the same and let the city figure out how they're gonna administer that. Like Brent said, we're just approving an amount.
Yeah.
And it's up
Okay.
to the city to decide how they wanna, if they wanna enter into that agreement.
Okay, and that is, right, that's true, because we haven't approved that agreement
Mhm.
yet for the next year.
Mhm.
But that is duly noted that we need to review that process and see how that works, yeah.
Okay, great. Katie, you have any questions?
So the 10% contingency, I do think that in most cases, I agree, it's a good idea to keep a little bit more than that in some cases. I was looking at the sewer fund, and I guess my big question is, because this contingency that's proposed in the budget is about twice the amount of what would be required for that 10% contingency, what would the chances be, or would it even be possible at all? Because I realize not everything's possible. Would it be possible to take some amount of that and move it to the reserve fund so that we can use it later on toward the wastewater treatment plant?
Other question you want to speak to, Sadie, or should I just?
You're saying, you said in the sewer fund, so fund
Uh,
60?
I am looking at page 32 of tab 4, which is the sewer fund, GL code 6007985.
And you're, I'm sorry, can you repeat the
I was just noticing that contingency is a really nice big size contingency, probably about twice the size that it's recommended to be. So would it be possible at all to take some of that contingency, leave more than the 10%, because I think that's a good idea, but maybe take some of it and move it to the reserve fund so that we could later on use it toward the wastewater treatment plant?
I don't know that it would be necessary to move it to the reserve fund. Because it's gonna stay in that fund and we have enough budgeted right now for what we're planning to do in this fiscal year. I would think we could just build up that contingency for the following year and use that as project money the following year.
Okay.
Like actually list it out in the project, because this project will continue
Yeah.
for a few years, obviously.
Obviously.
So I don't know that we would have to do that transfer this year,
Okay.
but let it build up a little bit more and then use a big chunk of that leaving a large contingency the following year.
I was just noticing how attractive that contingency looks, and I'm like, how can we move it around and save some of it for a rainy day? But I think that sounds like a great idea too.
And it's a little different than the contingency in general fund because it is specifically in the sewer fund. So it's allocated for that purpose, right?
Joel?
Quick question, actually, two questions. One, what's our minimum contingency requirement? Like, is it 10%, 15%?
10%, the
10%,
policy is
okay.
10% in those
Okay.
funds.
I know we've talked, I think I've heard 15% in some things, so I wasn't sure.
We do. I was very conservative this year. I'm noticing those contingencies. I know we have a big wastewater treatment plant coming up, but also I do believe that the funds that the city receives should be spent for the betterment of the city. But at this point, we are on a good trajectory and running a conservative budget, and so that we do have bigger contingencies, and maybe we can expand in areas or services in the following years.
Okay. And the second piece was, I didn't think it's just necessarily the amounts that we're approving. I think it's the purpose and the use behind it as well. We had to make sure that the amounts we're putting for match to what we're going for. So it's not just the amount. So that's why I'm specifying those, that we need to reword those on purpose, and anything else on there that's off, it's the amount behind it. So it's the purpose behind it, not just the amount. So.
Okay. Questions? All right. Let's,
It's a different
We
topic
get
though.
okay, Denise, go ahead.
So the library I see has a increase of staff when you look at their, and I noticed that their hours are still less than that was before COVID. So with the increase of staff, are they going to be opening to more of their regular hours as before COVID?
I haven't heard that they are increasing those hours yet, but their programs are definitely robust. And so I would have to talk to, oh my goodness.
Is that me?
I will have to talk to Michelle about those hours as going forward. And so they haven't indicated to me any increase in the hours at this time, but definitely increase in programs. And they just have their new mobile library van that will be an additional program that they're running soon.
Yeah, I think they were waiting for that other full-time person to be able to open back up on Sundays, so.
Okay.
and
Yeah,
I-
because they haven't been open on Sundays
Right.
due to, yeah, good thing to know. Thank you.
Okay, Brent, you had something?
Yeah, I guess a couple. One was related to Katie's. Yeah, I appreciate the conservative contingencies. Some of these seem even excessive. So is there a path through which, if the city council wants to expend these contingencies down this year, they can do that, or we're just stuck with these contingencies?
That is why we put them in contingency. There's also a line called, I don't remember what that line is called, where you can't spend it. If you put it in unappropriated,
Yeah.
then you cannot move it out of that. And so it's stuck there for the year. When we put the ending fund balances in contingency, then if that is available and something else comes up, that can be moved out of contingency. Is that through a staff? Is that it's a transfer resolution? And that would go to the city council.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have
Vincent,
some
did you have
online
your
too.
hand up? I couldn't tell up there. I
Yes.
thought I saw it.
Vincent and
Yeah.
Jacob.
Yeah, I had a couple questions on the revenue side of the general fund.
Yeah.
So it looks like for the most part, most of our incoming tax money is pretty stagnant, like year over year. I know we were talking about yesterday, there was a meeting about like lessening the regulations for like dispensaries and stuff like that. Would we see like an automatic increase in like our tax funding if we were to open like a dispensary? Like, is it like tied to like the amount of licenses we give out, or is it just a general given to us by the state at their own like percentages?
From what I understand, it's a percentage of the sales. So we do get a shared, revenue. Is that right? The shared revenue on the marijuana tax, because it's allowed, even though we don't have a store here at the current time, but if a store did open, they pay a tax that, I'm not sure if it all goes to the city, some of it, I'm not sure where it all goes, but is it 3% that comes to us? And so this, yeah, so I'm not completely clear on how that comes in. Do you want to?
And just to piggyback on that, I know that the city has passed a 3% if we do have a store. Is that forecasted in the budget at all, that you might have some dispensary before the end of this next budget year?
It is not forecasted, and I'm not sure when that fund would come in. If they say they were able to open in December, I'm not sure.
I think
when
it's
that-
quarterly.
Is it quarterly?
Yeah,
So
they
yeah,
pay
we have
that.
not budgeted for
Okay.
that. And
Just-
that would, yeah.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, and then on like the grant side of things, it looks like the amount of money we're gonna get, is that locked in? Like we know we're gonna get $400 and almost $20,000 worth of grants, or is it just potential grants we can get?
Oh, that is the ARPA funding. So that is for sure. We know that's the right amount that we'll be getting for that ARPA funding.
Okay. And then one last question on the general fund, on the police, because it is a sizable increase on the amount we're spending for.
Mhm.
So we would start paying for that this year, but we wouldn't see the benefit for a full year, or would we see like more police presence, like as we since we're paying more? Like how does that actually work?
So the way that works through the agreement is that we would pay, so the when they hire a new officer, unless they're a lateral transfer, then they have to go through a certain amount of training, and it can take about a year. They're having a hard time getting enough new deputies on board anyway. And so the way they'll bill us half of the cost of that deputy. So they don't want to pay for the deputy to go through training and then give them to us. So they have the cities pay the salary they'll bill us like half of it in this coming year. And then once we cross over July 1 of next year, they'll bill us the other half, and that way we can budget for it. We budgeted, I think, a little high, hoping that we might even get one sooner. But the plan is to do half this year, half in the next fiscal year, and then have them come on board in September of 2023. That's what I was talking with the chief about. And it seems, it's been a big discussion on who should pay for that deputy while they're in training. But that is the agreement that the contract cities and Clackamas County has come to. So
When you say they will give them to us, is that officer stationed in Estacada, or is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah. So they have shift bumps or rotations where maybe a deputy who's working here doesn't have enough seniority to stay here. Somebody can bump him out they do that in March and I think in September. And so we can get a different person who's a deputy, but it would be a deputy that is assigned to Estacada. We just increased, another reason why this is a little higher than last year's, we just increased from 72, it's because we have three. We had 2.75 and we increased it to 3.0. So that was a little increase in the cost. And then, and now this one would take us to 4.0 as we go through the process. But yes, it is costly. It's definitely worth it. And it's a priority, I believe, of the council. And still, we believe that the value that we're getting and the breadth and the depth of coverage by being a contract city, and the other contract cities are Happy Valley and Wilsonville. And it works out very well having the contract with the county for our police services.
Okay, great, thank you. Any more questions up on the screen there?
Teresa?
Teresa, did you have something? I can't hear you.
You're on mute.
I know I had to unmute it because my
Okay.
dog decided to bark. So sorry about my dogs barking. So my question is actually about the waste water plant, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. You guys took the waste from the plant and fertilized fields with it, correct? Is that what I understood?
That was the biosolids part of it. Yes,
Right.
yes.
So my question is you guys are trying to find a different way to deal with that, right?
Correct.
Why not offer it to our farmers and make some money off of it?
They,
Is that something?
yeah, that's what we have been doing, and it is a benefit to the farmers. However, we're getting quite a bit of pushback from neighbors of the farmers. And so they don't really have a, if the farmer agrees to have that it's Class B fertilizer. If it moves to Class A or grade A, you can use it on like a vegetable garden. So
Right.
it's not like it's quality and it's a benefit to the farmers. In the winter time, the fields are very soggy and it's hard to get enough dry days to spread it. And we are getting some pushback from the neighbors of the farmers. And so
Oh.
there's a way that this is like a screw press and it dewaters the biosolids and then it can be hauled over east is what a lot of the other facilities do here. They'll haul it east. And where there's many fields with nobody living right next door. So it works out.
Well,
Yep.
I mean, I've been on a farm my whole life and don't live next to a farm if you don't like fertilizer, but that's
I
kind of.
hear you.
But sorry.
It could be worse, right? Than what this.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't have farmers, we don't eat. So, okay, that was my question on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Okay, I've got Joel and then Katie.
My question has to do with, as you know, we just approved the Traffic and Safety Committee. I suspect there's going to be some recommendations from them over the course of this budget cycle to maybe, recommend speed bumps or traffic changes, things like that. Do we have stuff planned in the budget for that? I said we have a contingency of 314, I think is what it was, or
In the
sorry.
street funds.
Yeah, is that what that would come out of if they recommended something to adjust for that? Or should we be considering that as a budget line item or something along those lines?
We have funded $45,000 for street maintenance. I think, and if you want to speak to this, feel free, but like the speed signs or the slow down signs, speed bumps, things like that could be, I believe, utilized from that fund. And I think Don has some plans for that upcoming, or he might have them ordered this year, but it's hard to get things. You'll be able to order. So we do have some order planned for July 1st. And then we could also take a look at those recommendations, and we don't have specific amount budgeted for that committee to.
Yeah, I know we don't have it for the
recommendations,
committee.
yeah.
I'm thinking they're going to make some recommendations and I have a feeling it's going to be a heavy one with specifically more pedestrian safety is what I've heard a lot of people in the cities, they're probably going to push them for that one. Example being like audible noise for crossing the road right here, people with vision disabilities. We all know one person in here has vision disability. He almost got hit crossing the road the other day. So I'm feeling that that's going to be brought up to them to look at. So things like that, is that 45,000 going to be a sufficient amount to cover things like
cover
speed
the-
bumps or random stuff that might be presented to the council that the council may approve?
That would be an estimated number. It's hard to tell at this point going forward. So we'll work off this number at this time, but then going forward, we might want to, as we roll into next year, because this will be a new committee up and running. We'll see what the recommendations are. I know in other cities, if there's a recommendation from the committee and there's funding for it, they can just go ahead and do it. And if not, then there's a prioritization process that says, okay, when we do get more funding. So that might be something that we need to include in the upcoming budget. It was not put into this budget, but it could be worked in if that ends up being needed.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Katie.
Page 18. I don't want to pick on librarians because I think that the library staff are wonderful and fabulous and amazing. But looking at the line item for employee recognition and saying where money is allocated for each department, it does seem excessively high for the library employee recognition. And I guess I would just appreciate an explanation as to why.
That's a good question.
I think it's actually just kind of what they've been budgeting. They never come close to spending it. I
Okay.
can say that.
If they don't spend that much year after year, maybe we could have a different number there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of just take the recommendation from the library director and go with it. But yeah,
looking at,
Look at the
yeah,
actuals.
looking at how,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, it's not a good optic on this page.
Yeah.
And maybe for the next year, it would be in the library's best interest not to
Mhm.
stand out like that when they approve their budget as compared to the other departments.
Okay.
Just throwing that out there.
Thank you.
Which page was that on?
18, page 18, it's under the employee recognition code under the miscellaneous expenses.
Under the
937.
budget, under the budget spreadsheets.
So it's nearly the last page, close to, getting
Yeah.
close to the last page.
Okay, Brent?
So to Joel's question about the street stuff, wouldn't that be a place where contingency could be used?
Could be, yes.
Okay, because that's what I was getting at. If something comes up, you have plenty of funds to make that happen.
That's what I expected. I just
Yeah.
wasn't sure.
Yeah, and we do have over 10% contingency on the street funds.
Yeah. That's good.
I was thinking too that supplemental budgets are good for that purpose too.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then I appreciate Joel's attention to detail on the Chamber of Commerce. So I know the city will probably be in touch with the Chamber of Commerce about that. And I appreciate Denise giving the clarification because the money from the city, because I'm on the Chamber of Commerce, doesn't go to pay for advertising. It goes so that our executive director can make all those connections that she does for the sake of tourism for the city. So it's much more labor intensive than it is any sort of commodity, so to say, that is purchased for
Sounds more like it's a
tourism.
grant is what it is.
Well, I guess I'll leave it to the city to work that out with the chamber,
Yeah.
but I just to Denise's point, and I appreciate the reminder, it's not buying ad space. It's not buying stuff that we're putting on a website necessarily. It's buying the staff time to pursue those tourism opportunities for the city.
Yeah. I'd
And
be
then,
interested to
yeah,
see
and I
how
look
that's-
forward to the city having a conversation to just clarify that.
Well,
It's kind of an odd anomaly here under the general fund revenue, court fines. 2020 actual, they've gone from 55,000, 2021 actual to 25,000, 2022 adopted 10,000, and 2023 proposed 7,000. Why the decline? We just have a very good group of people out here.
We have a very educational police force, I think. 'Cause we have had a great reduction in, can you hear me? Or do you want to speak to that a little bit too? Because you deal with the court department.
Yeah.
That is, and we have, I've had conversations with Chief Mendoza, trying not to suggest that, hey, those deputies should write some more tickets. But it's been a very different, it's a different climate right now for law enforcement. There's certain things they can't pull people over for. I think when they do pull people over, they do a lot of education versus just handing out a ticket. But it's a concern that, and we might have to make adjustments in how that court department is running going forward.
good.
I
Denise?
have a question on that
Yeah.
same thing. So in the past, about 15,000 of that was from collections because are we not getting the collections anymore?
We are still getting the collections. We just don't get them as often as we
Okay.
were. I mean, we used to have, I think we had a higher number of citations in collections. So we were getting bigger amounts from them. But over the past few years, we haven't been getting those citations, so nothing has been going to.
I
collections.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I'm not seeing any more hands, so have we answered all the questions? Do we have anybody? else?
I have one.
Okay, sure.
On the library fund revenue, I know that it lists $8,000 proposed for library fines. And a lot of libraries now are actually doing away with fines. So I'm wondering if that's something they've considered.
That is something that I've spoken with Michelle, the library director, about. Is she online? She was going to, she wasn't sure she was going to get home in time to get online. Okay, so then if she was, I'd let her speak to that. But that's something that we've discussed, and she's noted that there's a discussion among Clackamas County libraries about doing away with fines. We haven't come to that conclusion yet. They do help me turn in my library things on time or at least shortly thereafter. But it's a tendency to not want to, I think, penalize people for using library materials. So it's something that has been discussed, but we aren't moving in that direction at this time. But knowing your line of work, that might be good discussion with you too, so.
Thank you for that. Okay, any more questions from anybody in the queue? Want to make sure we get everyone. Oh,
Yeah,
Joel.
one last question and let's get out of here. I'm trying to find it in here. Where is I want to see what the last year's community grant program amount was, and I don't know where to find it in here. Can you? There's a lot here. I was trying to find it. I just want to see if or maybe you can tell me, are we doing the same as we did last year? Or are we doing less or more?
Sadie's looking that up really quickly.
It's on page.
That's okay.
Page 3 of our budget. So it's in 1002.
Is it the one that's, because it says community org sponsorships?
Yep.
Okay, so I see the adopted budget says 16,000. Is that?
That's what we adopted last year.
Okay.
And this year we increased that to 25,000.
But-
It doesn't show the actual for the previous.
Yeah.
Yeah, we moved it into 1002,937.
Yeah, it's in 237 or 937.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or 20,000, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we increased
I see
it.
what this year is. I was just kind of curious if we've gone up or down over the.
Yeah, we increased it 4,000 this
Increase
year.
it. Perfect. Okay, thanks.
Vincent?
And
Another
then
question?
Vincent, did Vincent have a question?
Yeah, on the quick question on the salaries for for city workers. So on the pages, it shows like step 1, step 2, step 3. Is that like every year it shows how much of an increase they're getting from year to year, or how does that actually work?
That is, and that's the approved salary scale that the council sets, and it's not automatic. It's reviewed at their annual performance review, but it is based on performance. So it's not that it's guaranteed. Is that right? This will be my first year of doing some of those similar, but yeah, it's not guaranteed. But if it's earned, then it is allotted each year. Does that
Okay.
answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, I was just looking at the different, like the library specialists, I mean, the pays seem on the lower end, to be honest.
I agree.
Especially if we're requiring like years of experience, especially for like the technician and down, 40, it doesn't seem like that good of a salary for people providing services for us. So I didn't know if do the city council vote to increase those over time, or
It's adopted and it's, how many years is it? I can't remember. It's like 11 year. It's an 11-year scale. We're in the final year that it was approved for, right? So it'll be revised and presented to the city council for approval. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think those folks that are on receiving the lower wages, some of them are part-time workers. Sometimes they're youth, summer, but I mean, it costs everybody money to live, and it's definitely seen an increase lately. So that is something that will be considered and will be presented to the city council. Is it this coming fiscal year that we'll present it, or yeah? Yes. After July, we'll review that. And then, and then how those increases go. Sometimes when you're making the lower amount and it's increased by a percentage, 75-cent an hour raise is like, woohoo. So we might have to, times have changed. And so we'll be reviewing that and doing some, requesting some information from other cities in the area and making comparisons, and then working with the city council on that.
Great, thank you. Benson, does that
Great.
answer your question?
Yeah, just as a comment, since inflation was so high, cost of living is increasing for everyone. It's just that's good that we'll be reviewing it soon. So perfect.
Okay, thank you. Jerry?
So one thing that stood out to me a little bit was the large jump in fuel and lubricants. It jumped, $12,300 roughly. Is that just because the cost of petroleum products has gone up so much?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
I just wanted to clarify that. That's where I assumed it was.
Any
I
more questions?
appreciate all these questions. This is a very
It's
inquisitive
a
budget
thorough crowd,
committee.
isn't it? All right, so I'm not seeing any more hands up. So I think we can proceed. We thank you for all the information and kind of covering every base. I think everybody got their questions answered, so I'm happy about that.
And in between, I will say in between now and next year, if people want to come and meet with me or Sadie and understand more how the, how the budget is set up as far as the funds and things like that, we'd be happy to talk with you anytime. So.
Thank you. All right, and there were no citizens on there in the hold. Their hands up.
No hands.
Okay, great. We are now at the make a motion point of this. I think you've all had a chance to ask all the questions, so you know what the budget is, what consists. I need a motion on the floor.
I move to approve the budget as amended, moving the ARPA funds to a reserve line item in the general fund.
Great, I have a first, I have a second.
I second.
Okay, first and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have the motion to approve the total ad Valerium property taxes.
I move to approve a rate of $2.67949 per $1,000 of total ad valorem property taxes to be certified for collection.
Second.
Okay, a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
That's our set tax rate, like our
Mhm.
permanent tax rate. So that's what we'll approve that every year. It won't change. I have no indication of it ever changing. That's our set tax rate. So that's why we approve it.
My understanding is the law actually says that it can't be
Can't
changed.
change.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and announcement of next meeting, I think we'll worry about that when the time comes. I think we need to worry about that right here. And this meeting is adjourned, people.
Thank you, everybody.
Do we need to delete this?